If you've ever heard someone say, oh, the marketing team just posts pretty pictures on social media, then this episode's for you. Today, we're joined by Laurean, who is more affectionately known as the Hotel Marketing Lady and has spent the last 15 years working in marketing roles for hotels and resorts around the world. She talks a little bit about her viral post about the hotel marketing iceberg that really struck a nerve, and in fact, engaged with over 300 hotel marketers worldwide, really understanding and resonating, commiserating that a lot of hotel teams think marketing is responsible for such a small portion of the overall property strategy when really there's so much more that goes into it. It's not just social media, but it's guest journey mapping, property positioning, data segmentation, and so much more. So she talks a little bit about how to connect all of those dots, how to have strategy, how to avoid burnout, things that people going into this field and this position should really understand, and other really tactical and helpful insights like why teams need to start planning festive in May and not November, and really just how to connect all of the dots. So we're so glad to have had her with us today. And if any of this resonates with you, we think you'll really enjoy this episode. So let's get into it. Welcome back to Foundry Talks. I'm Rachel Stoyanovsky, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Laurean, who is the founder of the Hotel Marketing Lady and has 15 plus years of experience in marketing across luxury hospitality brands. So Laurean, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here in the podcast. I'm really honored to be here having a chat with you, talking about everything that is hotel marketing, two things that I love.
Well, we're so excited to have you. I had the privilege of getting to chat with you prior to this recording, and I feel like we could have talked forever. So we'll try to keep it on topic today. But to kick us off, if you just want to give us a quick introduction about yourself, and then we can jump in.
Absolutely. So as Rachel mentioned, my name is Laurean Sahilices. I'm originally from Argentina, but I've been in New Zealand for 11 years and working across the world with different brands and different companies. I've always been working in hotel marketing. I was working with some of the largest global hotel groups between Marriott, Accor, IAG, and recently Mina. And my role, of course, I developed my whole career there, starting from an intern and then finished as the cluster director of marketing recently. And I recently decided to build my own business, which is called the Hotel Marketing Lady, where I support hotel marketing professionals to continue developing their career with less stress and more clarity, and also to support as well hotel owners or director of sales and marketing and commercial leaders to drive more direct booking through clarity and through a strategy and with a more staged approach to achieve their commercial goals.
I love it. Okay, so tell us, you've shared with me, but I would love for you to share just the background, or I guess the origin of the brand name, the Hotel Marketing Lady.
Yes, well, that's fun one, because as many other marketers may know, that when they have any marketing problem, any other kind of problem, we work in a hotel, they say, oh, you just talk to the marketing lady, she will fix it. And it's like, yeah, sure. So it was funny because everyone says, oh yeah, the marketing lady will sort it out. I says, okay, you know what? When I build my own business, it has to be named like that.
Yes.
And I think, yes, after like 15 years working in this industry, I recently transitioned as a strategic marketing consultant. And I think the main reason was out of frustration, because
Yeah.
I've been in the industry really long time, and what I've noticed is two main things. One is, when I was working as a director of marketing, it was really hard to work with agencies or service providers that they understand the industry. So it's just like, it has to be another way. So many times, yes, I was working with big brands from PR, design, you name it, but they didn't get how the hotel industry works, which was very challenging. So they promise the moon and they under deliver because they don't get it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is in terms of, for me, building my own teams, it's been really challenging as well to find marketers that, yes, they do know how marketing works, but to understand the technicalities and how challenging and nice it is to be working inside a hotel. So that's why I was like, okay, how can I help these two different audiences to achieve their best, but getting like, on the ground experience. And I think that's where I start connecting all the dots and says like, okay, let me help this industry from another perspective. And that's how we built.
Yeah, I love it. And it's such a need because I think, as you said, it's a very different environment when you're working in house. There's so much flexibility, and you have to be able to adapt based on what the needs of the operations are. And so you're right, a lot of agencies who don't really have that in house experience, they may be great at what they do, but
Yeah,
they're not agile enough to be able to provide the hotels with what they need. So I
absolutely.
love that you saw that and you're working to fix it as we are. So and I want to just quickly talk about your viral post that really caught our eye and that resonated with me as someone who worked in house for so long. And it said, if you still think hotel marketing is just posting pretty photos on Instagram, we need to talk. And I love the image that you had we'll link it for everyone who's listening, but it essentially was like an iceberg. And on top, it was like pretty pictures, website, and then below were all the things that hotel marketers really do. So tell me like where the idea from that post came from and now how people have resonated with it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for spotting that out. Yes, I think it was funny because it's like I could like keep adding like so many other things, but for the interest of the post, I keep it generic. Yeah, no, I think that the idea of that one it came out because so many times I noticed like after working with general managers and director of sales and commercial leaders, it's like they keep thinking that, oh yeah, well, just marketing team doesn't need to have more people, doesn't need to get more money because at the end of the day it's just posting photos on social. And since I actually this is just a little piece of the big puzzle, and that's where the inspiration came from. It's like I saw this as an iceberg. It's like why they keep saying only the tip of the
Yeah.
iceberg, which is not even the tip, it's just like
Yeah.
one part of the big iceberg, you know. And how do we actually untangle everything that is below the surface, which is just like heaps of hours trying to understand what works, what doesn't work, how to connect all the different dots, like from PR, from social, from website, analytics, and also at the same time, it's like understanding like human behavior and psychology, just
Yeah.
understanding what makes a buyer like, you know, resonate with your hotel brand versus
Mhm.
another one. So there's a lot of things that personally think we need to start talking more about it and drive more education, especially for commercial leaders or general managers that they are amazing at what they do, but they still don't get it exactly the power of marketing when done right.
Yeah.
And I think also another thing that inspired me to do that is just the importance of connecting all the dots. Because
Yeah.
so many times it happens to me, like me as former director of marketing or working with other properties, is like, you know, you get like so busy, like
Yeah.
really busy, especially when you work with cluster hotels. I used to manage 6 properties. So
Yeah.
imagine at
Gosh.
that time, yes, I was managing all the digital. And it's just like, yes, you get like so busy, like extinguishing fire. Oh, you need to do this, you know, that you forget why you're doing it.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a clear roadmap and a clear understanding of why you do what you do, is really hard to then prove value to your reporting line or to commercial leaders or general manager. So that's why it's like it's very important for us marketers to start like, you know, communicating and educating those decision
Yeah.
makers on why we do what you do, and also seeing the commercial strategy as a whole. It's just not sales, because
Yeah.
guess what? I always say it's like a table with three legs. If you're missing revenue, if you're missing sales, or if you're missing marketing, I'm sorry, you haven't
One's
missed.
gonna, yeah.
The other one's gonna fall because you need to
Yeah.
have the three of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you had positioned it too, that oftentimes, like, I think what people resonated was the fact that they're feeling burnt out because that is all that people think they do is just that tip of the iceberg when really they're responsible for so much more. And so that starts to feel exhausting when like teams can't even get on board to kind of understand what they're going through. And so I loved seeing the comments on that post and just that everyone was like, finally, someone gets it, someone understands.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was amazing because also something, it was great, but it was scary at the same time.
Yeah.
First of all, I was surprised that it went really nuts. When I was having a look at the stats and said, oh my gosh, what is this? But then when I started, you know, digesting all the information and going through the comments, I noticed that that post was like seen for 500,000 people, which is nuts. And I saw that more than 300 hotel marketers from around the world responded to that. They either reshare it or they engage with it. And when I was going through the comments, many of them highlighted the kind of things, which is very scary, but it's also something that I've experienced it and so many other colleagues as well, because you get like so busy, and when you don't have clarity and you don't know how the success look like, it's very
Yeah.
easy to end in that route. And I always say, no one wants to be there, so let's try to avoid that. Then
Yeah.
the other thing that also noticed as well is like so many other marketers, they were like either drowning in tasks, either having lack of understanding what success look like, and
Yeah.
also at the same time is like they feel undervalued and underseen, saying that,
Yeah.
oh, my manager doesn't appreciate me, or the commercial leadership don't understand this or that. And it's just like, okay, it's good to see that we're all on the same page. Now, how can we support each other?
Yeah.
Because so many times it's so lonely, and trust me, so especially
Yeah.
if you have like either one property or a cluster of properties in, and that's why it's like I came up with this idea. It's like, no, I need to do something. It's like, how can we connect each other? So that's why it's great that that we connect through LinkedIn and
Yes.
the other professionals as well, because that's how I see that this industry can move forward. It's just by supporting each other and having these kind of conversations that not many people talk about it, but we
Yeah.
all go through it. So it's like
We're all
that.
doing it.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was so interesting, or your point of view, what I thought was great, is that you also want to shed light on what this role actually is, so that
Hmm.
people coming into this role, maybe they're new or they're thinking, this is what I want to go into hospitality marketing, that it's clear that educational piece comes in, where it's clear what they can expect that position to look like. Because
Oh
I
yeah.
think you're right. I think people who maybe are new to the industry, they think, oh, it's just the website and social media, you know, and it really is all of these other things. And so also having a bit of education for people who may be considering that, like, hey, here's actually what it is. It's amazing. You will love it, but you have to have a reality of what it is really like.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think also what I've noticed as well is like having the opportunity to work with some of the largest global hotel groups.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot through trainings, which is great. But what I've noticed and what I keep highlighting, especially to human resources leaders, is like, hey, there's a lot of like tools and resources for operational roles, but we
Yeah.
need to be mindful that specifically marketers are a key part of the commercial success. Then why don't we get enough trainings? You know,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of things that I try to keep it like very down to earth, which is the content that I share on my personal LinkedIn is like based on, yes, of course I've studied a lot, but also on the ground as well, because that's the most valuable one. When you can get the chance to work together with a colleague or with a
Yeah.
counterpart. I always encourage people when they're starting their journey to look into probably you can work like for 3 months, you can do an internship there or
Yeah.
shadowing people, because the hospitality industry is all about people, right? And
Yeah.
connecting with people, but you also need to go through the experiences as well, because what you've learned on the job will not be written on any other textbook. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm trying to do, especially having these conversations with you or some other
Yeah.
colleagues from the industry. Is like, let's talk about what actual hospitality is, which is like being on the trenches and getting it
Yeah.
done you know
Yeah.
I think that's essential, because also I remember a few months ago I have a chat with a couple of universities, and they says like, why you don't teach marketing in hospitality? Is like, why not? Why it's just like operational roles? It's like, how
Yeah.
are you expecting to build like a new generation of hotel marketers? Well, when you go to a marketing school, they don't teach you about hospitality. If you go
Hospitality.
to hospitality, they don't teach you about marketing.
There's the
So
missing piece. Something's missing.
exactly, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's very
Well, and
interesting.
I think it's interesting for brands too. I mean, I was lucky enough to work in house for a company that did value trainings, and it wasn't a lot. I would say maybe once a year there was an opportunity, and of course you had to pay and whatever to go with other people, your counterparts from other properties within the portfolio that held your same position, to have kind of a little retreat talking about a specific topic, a marketing topic, and it was great. But what was the training itself was great, but what was even more valuable was learning about how, even though those other properties were still in our same brand and our same portfolio, there was like this missing piece where we didn't understand what was working for them. And so it was great to hear, like, that was really successful for you. We should try that. Maybe that would work for our property too. And so even just the ideas that can come and the problem solving that can come from when you are connecting with people in your same role, I think is so valuable.
100%. And that's something that I
Yeah.
really love. I think it was Marriott. I love it because I was building the first Marriott in New Zealand, and I haven't experienced the brand before, and it was new to the country. And they say, okay, we have this training exercise where we put you for 2 months with a buddy. So I had my buddies in, even though it was a different country, which was in Australia, I've learned a lot from how they would
Yeah.
see the brand, how they would experience, and then how to put it into place.
So
Because that's
smart.
exactly that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you have, and that's what I really love about working with global hotel brands is the power of scale, and that there's always someone in the family that can help you, do something that you don't know, and it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so it's like, how do we take that and help independent hotels and boutique hotels have this have the same thing?
I love it. And honestly, that's
Yeah.
exactly what my mission now is. Okay, with
Yeah.
all these that I've learned, so how can I help independent hotels? And I think that that's amazing because also what I've strategically done is I says I want to work with the global guys, but I want to learn because of course the French ones they don't see the same as the Americans versus
Yeah.
the English ones. So that's why I try to get what it worked for me and then try to say, okay, what could work for someone else that they don't have maybe the budget or the resources that these big boys have, and
Yeah.
try to, localize it to their property. And I think like the one thing that I always say the one thing I wish I would have learned when I first started is the importance of connecting all the dots and having a clear strategy in mind. Because trust me, it took me like so many years of trial and error, and it's just like, okay, let's simplify the journey. But I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So it's
Yeah.
like I always is like asking the right questions to the right people, and that will simplify it a lot because like then so many, especially independent hotels where budgets are tighter, it's very common to see it's like, oh yeah, I do a social media post once when I'm not too busy, and then the
Yeah.
website you set it up and you forget it, and it's
Yeah.
like it's always on kind of role where you need to
Yeah.
make sure that all the pieces of the puzzles are aligned with the same goal. But at the
Yeah.
same time, what I do see the opportunity for boutique hotels or independent hotels is they're more flexible.
Yes.
So if they want to make changes, it's way easier versus, global hotel brands. When you want to change a website template, it could take like 5 years
Right.
versus, yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
exaggerating.
Exactly. No, trust me, it's not.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's where I see the opportunity, especially with independent hotels. They're more flexible, but I think that they still need to get more. I think the bigger picture and more strategic in their approach to make sure that they can, make the most out of what they have, rather than just saying, "Oh, complaining we don't have the structure that these big boys have," because they
Yeah.
do have the flexibility that the big boys don't.
Yeah. So they can get the structure and then be ahead. There you go.
100%, 100%. And that's kind of what I'm doing now with some clients that I'm working at the
Yeah.
moment. It's like, okay, how can we set up yourself for success?
Mhm.
And I don't think that, you need to be working with someone forever. It's just like help them through navigate the problem that they currently have.
Yeah.
Is whether if you just open a property and you don't have marketing, or whether if you've been in the market for a really long time and you need to reposition your property.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the one thing that I always say is like, hospitality industry, yes, we are the industry of people, we are the industry to create new memories, but at the end of the day we are not a charity. So
Yes.
we need to be very mindful on what are the commercial goals and the role that marketing have in that big
To
puzzle.
support it.
Correct.
Yeah.
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 So this kind of tees up our next question for you. So for GMs who still see marketing really as more of a cost center, what's the clearest way to help demonstrate ROI? What metrics does marketing really influence that you could clearly say to a GM, hey, but look, marketing did X, Y, and Z?
Yes, that's a great question. I think it's like it comes back to previously what we touched base on education. And it's like always understanding, first of all, like for example, when I started working with a hotel, either like if I'm a director of marketing or if I'm advising them, is like understanding what your commercial goals are, what does
Yeah.
success look like, because it's not the same like a resort in the middle of nowhere like in the Maldives or Fiji or any other destination versus a city hotel. Because in
Yeah.
city hotel, you have like mice, or you have groups, or you have different kind of
Yeah.
goals, right? So once you get to the understanding of what the commercial success look like, then you can start aligning all the dots. But I think it's like also highlighting that vanity metrics do not measure success. Like for example, so many times I say, oh yeah, I just opened the hotel, I want to have more followers on Instagram. Okay, why? Do you
Yeah.
think that having more Instagram followers will pay your bills? Definitely not.
Yeah.
So it comes back to the education. And it's like, do you want to get more followers on Instagram? Fantastic. Then what does it gonna do for your property? So
Yeah.
if you have more followers, that's amazing. But at the end of the day, you want them not to be zombies. You want them to
Yeah.
actually engage with your content. So in a
Yeah.
sense of driving more direct bookings, driving more traffic to your website.
Hmm.
What is the end goal in mind? Another miss KPI is share of voice, and
Yeah.
this is a very very common mistake. Is like so many properties, either they opening or they've been there for a long time and they don't measure share of voice. And it's like, how are you going to achieve your visibility goals other than
Yeah.
side if you don't
Yeah.
track your PR efforts? And so
Yeah.
many people, I mean, so many hotels, they work with influencers, with media, and it's just like, and they are not monitoring that on a monthly basis. So that's one of another KPIs that I always try to put it into account
Yeah.
versus vanity metrics. But at the end of the day, it always depends on, okay, what's the commercial goal is, where you're going to find your ideal guests, in which channels, and based on those channels, then you find, okay, if my ideal guests spend more time on these XYZ channels, then what are going to be my main KPIs? And I try always just to move it away from vanity
Vanity
metrics.
metrics. Yeah.
And yes, and always making sure that at the end of the day, all the hotels' main goal should be drive more direct traffic to the website, because that's when they reduce the amount of money they would spend in OTAs, so the less OTA commissions. But of course, it's not an easy game; it's a long-term game, right? And then you start measuring. Yes, share of voice is one. More
Yeah.
DMs through Facebook, Instagram, or social media. That's another main KPI. And then again, we can keep talking forever on that. I will try to keep it aligned on what are the commercial goals and which
Yeah.
channels.
And which channels are you looking at? Yeah. So you've talked a lot about, or you've wrote about attracting the right guests at the right time on the right channel to really drive direct bookings, like you said. So what are ways that teams can do that? What are some strategies that you put in place for marketing to, I guess, first understand what are the channels that they should be focusing on to try to increase those direct bookings, or what can they do?
Yes, love it. I think that the most important thing is first to understand what's your brand value, what's the
Mhm.
brand proposition. In my case, I've been lucky enough to work with global brands where all that part was already done. And my goal was to localize that global brand to the specific property.
Yeah.
So, and we as marketers, we are the custodians of the brands, right?
Yeah.
We can't do our job if we don't understand what the brand stands for. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the main, most important thing I would say. Then
Yeah.
understanding, as we mentioned, your commercial goals. Saying, so you have X brand and then you have your commercial goals, fantastic. Then the brand should not be something for everyone, because if you try to achieve everyone, and I love this book from Seth Godin, where he says like, everyone is not your client. So if you talk to everyone, you talk to no one. And that's something that I keep seeing like
Yeah.
so many times. Like so many hotels try to be everything for everyone. And
Yeah.
that's not correct, because then how are you going to attract? So someone say, for example, that is going to a city hotel for an event may not be the same person that will come there to relax, or yes or no, we don't know. But we need to understand is like, what does your brand stand for? What are the services and experiences that you currently have
Yeah.
now? Are they aligned with your ideal guests? Yes,
Yeah.
no. Because that's when you start to rethink on the positioning of your property.
And how can you take that, tie it into the brand, the
Correct.
overarching, but really be specific for where you're at?
Correct. And that's something that I specifically love doing, especially because in the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years, I've been working a lot on pre-opening projects or conversions or renovations. And
Yeah.
that's the time where you have to sit down and be very strategic and thinking, who is your ideal guest? What are the pain points, what they like, what they don't like, why they come to your hotel versus your competitors. And then you start designing what are the guest experiences, what is the whole customer journey is going to look like
Yeah.
online and offline. But what happened when they start booking versus when they stay, how are you going to retain them? Because
Yeah.
that's another KPI as well, is that you not only wanted to drive share of voice and drive more traffic to your website, but you always wanted to retain those
Yeah.
guests, so that's something else that it needs to be properly planned to make sure that the guests that came to your property and came through the doors, yes, are paying the rates that you want them to pay, but they're having an amazing experience that they will turn into your brand ambassadors, and they will not only come back, but they will also share with their friends. And that's how you start building loyalty as well, regardless if you're a huge brand or an independent hotel.
Yeah. Well, and we like to think about it too. That guest journey, like you mentioned, it doesn't just end when they check out.
Oh
There's
no.
there's a whole other section of their journey that needs to be looked at. Okay,
100%.
so part of what you talked about made me think about this other question, and it's how, so you've, with all the pre-openings that you've been doing most recently, you've built those marketing foundations for properties between the Maldives and New Zealand. What are those marketing foundations that you think are, you must get done, or what does that mean for the first 6 to 12 months of a property? What must be in place before you can go bigger?
That's a great question. I think that the most important thing is have clarity on how that timeline looks like.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on a pre-opening, it's not the same if you're on a critical path to 30 days versus 6 months versus 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And this is even something that caught my attention because the other day, a few weeks ago, I saw a post from Rosewood Maldives, which is
Mhm.
opening in 2027. And I say,
They're
I love
already,
I love
yeah.
it because they are taking it very seriously. It's like, why would you hire someone 2 years before the opening? And it's just like, I love them, right?
Mm.
So that's a fantastic example.
Yeah.
Now, also, it happened to me that I've worked with properties. Oh, yeah, we're opening in 6 months. Okay, by the time you recruit someone and
Yeah.
they understand what the property is all about, then 2 months gone. So literally, you have 3 months to go to market. It's too late.
Yeah.
So there is no right or wrong, but you need to understand, first of all, where's the country? It's not the same for me when I opened my first property in the Maldives, that everything takes forever. And
Mhm.
realistically, you need, I would say, probably a good year before it
Mhm.
opens. If you're new to the Maldives, right?
Yeah.
Like for me now, I've been in the Maldives for 5 years on and off, so it's different. I know how the industry works, but if
Yeah.
you're new to a destination like that, there is a massive learning gap, right? If you're
Yeah.
in a city hotel, it's completely different because there's a lot of competition.
Yeah.
So you need to always consider what's the lead time that
Mhm.
your guests will have. For example, in the Maldives, depending on the country, lead time could be anything between 30 days to 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
So it's very different how you communicate to those potential guests versus, for example, in the last project I've worked in Auckland, the lead time was 2 days.
Yeah. Where are we
Exactly.
going this weekend?
Correct. So that's
Yeah.
how you need to, that's the first thing you also need to consider. Then, of course, as well, is like, what are the different guest experience? And coming back to what we previously mentioned, is understanding who are your ideal guests. And based on that one, what is the kind of message that you need to put out there, when, what time, and in which channels.
Yeah.
So for me, something that work a lot, it's like having a critical path. And again, I would say it's like either 6 months just to start with, and then what needs to happen when, and who will be accountable. And also, the main thing that I always say is like, marketing does not do marketing just for rooms. We
Yeah.
work with the whole property, right? So
Yeah.
in my case, when I did a conversion project in New Zealand, which was, as I mentioned, the first JW, we were all working together on the different guest experience, because it wasn't just selling new rooms. You need to
Right.
launch new restaurants. You
The
need to
spa.
open a club lounge. You need to have a spa. You need to, so it's like, how do we kind of course, you need to work very closely as well with your general manager and your operations leader or resort manager, just to make sure that as construction progress, so does the marketing strategy.
Yeah.
and then everything will fall. But for example, something very important as brand identity, like when it comes to collaterals,
Mhm.
I always tell this story. When I was doing my first pre-opening in the Maldives, we were doing pre-opening, of course, right? And we got
Yeah.
paper stuck in custom for 4 months.
Oh no.
Exactly. And I was just like, why no one told me this?
Yeah. Now
So
what?
exactly. So you always need to have your contingency plan as well.
Yeah.
But
Such a good point to have that a backup because something things like
exactly,
that can happen. You never know, especially when you are in more remote destinations.
100%, 100%. And of
Yeah.
course, that comes back from experience, right? There's nothing written in the textbooks until you experience it.
Yeah.
But what I always encourage is just to have a clear roadmap in terms of what do I need to do in my 30s, 60, 90s, or 6 months or whatever. And of course, it's like, think about like it's a long-term game. If you want to open a new hotel, you cannot think on what do I need to do in the next 3 months if you haven't done the homework in the 6 or 9 months before opening,
Yeah.
because it's very different when you start driving momentum like on a pre-opening. That's exactly what you could do. You could will build the foundations first. What's the brand stand for, my ideal guest, what's the key message. Once you have that, then you think it's like, okay, when is the good timing for me to start driving awareness? The way I like to do it is on a stage approach. For
Yeah.
example, what we did in Auckland, we were opening a restaurant as part of the renovation. So then we did a sub project, right? So I was working only on launching that restaurant. Of
Restaurant.
course, so many other things as well. But when we did that pre-opening, we treat the restaurant as a pre-opening of the restaurant itself.
Yeah.
It was a big piece of the puzzle of the whole renovation journey. And then what we did is, okay, phase one, we have appointed a chef. Okay, let's talk about the chef. So
Yeah.
then we did the whole piece of content about the chef. We activated press releases, we
Yeah.
activated medias as well. We start sending email marketing as well. So at least people start, oh, there's something happening in there.
Yeah.
We didn't release everything at the one go, but it was part of a bigger news, which is the renovation of this property.
Yeah.
Then 3 months later on, okay, let's start doing a tease of the kind of food and cuisine that we're going to have, the ambience. Bear in mind, the restaurant wasn't
It's still
built.
under construction.
Correct. So then we did, it was amazing because through social, we start like, every week we release a piece of construction, you
Love
know?
it.
Exactly. So you take the guests through the whole renovation journey and they feel
Yeah.
part of it. So when
Yeah.
when it opened, everyone was expecting, oh, I want to meet the chef, I want to try this
Yeah.
food and that, and they feel so identified with the story, but because we've been nurturing that for 9 months,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You have to have the planning in place to really succeed successfully in the execution of these projects.
100%. Because there's, and trust me, there's nothing worse than opening an amazing property and being the best hidden secret of the town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it happened to me before, and I think it's just like lack of planning. You
Yeah.
know, it
Yeah.
is fundamental. Yeah.
So this kind of leads me into more planning, but things for maybe hotels that are or boutique properties that are a little bit more established. So
Mhm.
you had a post that I loved because again, as coming from in-house, I have felt this, I have been there. So I wanted to talk about your festive planning post.
Oh yes, love it. I love city planning. Yeah.
So this kind of goes back to what you were talking about with, 30, 60, 90 days, even maybe six months out.
Mhm.
And you said that most hotels wait until November when the best PR spots, partnerships, and high-paying guests, they're long gone. They've already made their plans. Why do hotels consistently fall into this trap? And what kind of planning needs to happen to avoid this?
That's an amazing question, and I think we all need to talk more about this. And I think like I wouldn't have learned this if it wasn't for the fact that I've been in the Maldives for so long. And that's where you really learn how to plan
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah,
because that's how it works. People that decided to go to one property to versus another one in an ultra luxury market like it is the Maldives, it's at least 1 year in advance.
yeah. It takes a
So,
lot for people to get there. They have to be strategic in their own planning, so they're looking that far out.
correct. And I was so surprised because last year when I was going through festive, we were working with my team on creating the video of the festive itself, right? It was like, I
Yeah,
think it was New Year's time, and then we posted on the same night. And then it's just like, oh, why? What do you think that we're gonna have like any impact on future bookings? Next day, sales team came to me and says, we already have secured 5 bookings for next year thanks to the video that you just posted yesterday on social. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, I cannot believe it.
Yeah.
But again, this was established property, ultra luxury network, which is amazing. And we have little to none impact on social. But the fact that they have already been to the property and they saw what we've done for festive, that was a decision maker for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's amazing in terms of forward planning. But yeah, let me talk through more. So in terms of forward planning, something that I always recommend, of course, Maldives is the extreme case, right?
Yeah.
But taking the lessons learned from there is like why I think people need to plan in advance. Say for a city hotel, I would say at least 6 months in advance, at least.
Yeah.
And something that I've done, for example, and I think it's a good example in New Zealand when we were doing this conversion, right? It was festive, and we wanted to drive higher ADR through the top. The top, I don't know, residency, I don't know how they call it, but say the most expensive rooms, right?
Yeah.
And it was an old hotel, and there was not very established yet because it was went through conversion. So it says like, okay, we do have a dated product. What can we do with it? And then it says like, why don't we just take over one of those residencies, and then we partner up with an interior design company, and we just turn it into a Christmas escape,
Oh my
right?
gosh, I love it.
Yeah, so that's what we did. We just found a partner. It was amazing because I remember one of the coverage. It was that they start counting how many Christmas trees there were inside. Yes, inside the room, they counted 20 Christmas trees.
Wow.
Yes, and then they created a piece of content based on that. It went viral, and
Amazing.
yes, and it worked in the sense that yes, it did drive a lot of share of voice, but
Yeah.
also it also helped us as well to increase ADR for a city hotel who was going through conversion, and
With
we
an
also
outdated product.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that the main lessons is like the more you plan, the better. And the main
Mhm.
reason is because if you go out to talk about festive in November, when everyone is like saturated over festive, now
Yeah.
the opportunities for you to, I mean, for your piece of news to be covered are non to minimal, really minimal. Unless it's like it's a massive, activation
Right.
and yeah, exactly. It's just not going to happen. However, if you do plan in advance, what you can do is that, for example, you can secure partnerships. Like either you want to do a brand activation, or for example, you have more time to play with guest experiences as well. And another very important thing is like not only you have to plan what are you going to do, but you need to create the content because so many times, so many brands wanted to go out to talk about festive, and then they end up using
Stock.
shutter content exactly because they don't have the photos, and it's just like, well,
Yeah.
what is going to do the cut through between your property versus the other when you're using a stock image versus showing me the guest experience?
Yeah.
So that will give you enough time and also to earn the media versus spending
Yeah.
so much money. I'm not saying don't spend money on ads, I'm just saying it has to be part of a bigger picture,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also consider the lead time what we
Right.
previously discussed, because if your ideal guest is going to start thinking about festive 6 months in advance, 12 months in advance, or 2 weeks, that's when you need to put that message in the market.
Yeah. So for all the hotel GMs and everyone listening, when your marketing team comes to you and says, "Hey, it's July. We need to lock in what we're doing for festive season," you're going to say, "Okay."
Yes, here's an opportunity. Because also
Yeah.
what happened to me, I remember, especially in the Maldives, I tried to plan Christmas after Easter. So Easter is
Yeah.
gone,
Yep.
and
Then you
2 weeks
jump right in.
away, and then we start talking about festive, and it happens especially and it's funny, right? Because they say, oh, here's the marketing lady asking
Yeah.
again about festive, we just finished Easter, give me a break,
Yeah.
right? Especially from operations, like all my F&B friends is saying, no, 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 I don't want to talk about that. But
Leave
it's
it to
funny.
the chefs to be last minute.
Exactly. But then that's how everyone benefits out of forward
Yeah.
planning, because
Yeah.
then you give enough time for chefs to start thinking, oh, what can I do to innovate? Right.
Right.
I will put this example, what we did this year when I was still in the Maldives, we decided we pick up a theme, which was the 4 elements, right? So then it gave enough time to the chef to think, okay, what can I do related to fire, wood, air, and then it gives you more time for you to play with it and
Yeah.
align all the things, because there's nothing worse from my experience, what I've
Yeah.
seen, than defining a theme for festive, an operational team either not being able to deliver because they were not part of the planning, they
Yeah.
were not aware, or they didn't have the skills.
Yeah.
So that's why it's very important that when you have your festive meetings, all the leaders are part of those
Yeah.
meetings, and they're like forward thinking and they're action oriented.
Yeah.
Because so many times it happened to me. You sit down on a meeting, oh yeah, who's doing what? No one knows anything, and then
Mhm.
nothing happens.
Yeah.
So there's always need to be a driven person, but at the same time, it's like, for example, okay, 5 months before festive, we need to do a photo shoot. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
and that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Talk much.
almost feel like marketing is kind of like you said, the person that's kind of driving the conversation, but the teams, like chefs are really creative people by nature.
Oh
They
yeah.
come up with the most amazing ideas. And so I love that about just getting everyone in the same room. Okay, here's what we're thinking for the theme. Here's what we did last year. What should we do different this year? And kind of putting the power into the operations team to come up with things, but then still maintaining that a little bit of the control and making sure everything still aligns to that overarching theme, making sure it all connects, making sure there's a strong story for PR to be able to go and pitch that to media. But teams, I think, are excited and they often are just drowning in the operation. And so when they're given the opportunity to actually think and plan and come up with those things, they come up with amazing ideas. I've seen it. They love it. They come up with things that I wouldn't have thought of because I'm not intimately in the operation like they are. And so it really is the best of everything when they can do that. So
100%. And also the other thing is like no one, from my point of view, no one knows the guests better and more than operational people
yeah.
because they are the ones interacting with the guests every day. You
Yeah.
know, like people that they are working at the restaurant, at the bar, housekeepers, front office team, they're always dealing with them. You
Yeah.
know, so it's like, and that's where the opportunity of creating, you know, new guest experiences for festive, it comes by collecting all these ideas or like frustrations or
Yeah.
information. You know what, I've here during this period of time, there's so many guests asking XYZ, why don't we create this experience? You know, and everything is information. It's just a matter of, you know, putting all these creative minds all together and says that, okay, this is our opportunity to shine. And that's what
Yeah.
I always say is our, it's not a marketing thing, it's not a sales thing, it's
Yeah.
festive, it's everyone's responsibility. I would say festive,
Love
Easter,
that.
and a big event,
I
but
love it.
for festive, yes, it's everyone's responsibility to push forward and to feel, you know, feel part of a bigger picture altogether.
Yep.
Ultimately it will come into, yeah, more revenue for property for sure, but what
Yep.
is the experience that we all feel proud of it and that we all contributed from different angles.
Well, and I love that you talked about including maybe even just non-operational leaders like the front desk agents and like the
For sure.
concierge and the bellman, because I think making sure, and this goes back to your point about planning, if they can be given that information enough in advance and really learn it, because it is a lot to remember and a lot to learn, but then they can help sell those special experiences when they're talking to guests. They are then the festive ambassadors, and then that guest experience is even smoother because they're, wow, I got here. They knew everything that was going on. They told me about this thing. I never would have even known about it, but it was this great experience. I want to come back. And it almost helps, kind of takes away any missed opportunity if the guest perhaps wasn't aware of all of the amazing things that you had planned. Now they are in all of these different interactions. It's conversation pieces for the team to be able to interact with the guests more too.
Absolutely, 100%, because there's no point of having a fantastic, say, festive brochure, great ideas, everything looks fantastic, but then who's going to talk about it?
Right.
Yes, marketing we talk about on social, on website, this, and that, but then on property,
Yeah.
everyone needs to live and breathe what's happening for festive. And I'm always obsessed about that.
Yeah.
And all my team know about that. But yes, you need to always constantly be reminding them, you know, the guys that work in the pool, the guys that welcomes you. So everyone needs to live and breathe the festive activities for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you've seen the industry from multiple angles. If there's one thing you could change about how hotels approach marketing, what would it be?
Whoa.
And
Uh,
maybe it's a couple things.
Yeah, a couple, yeah, for sure. Um, I think like from my experience, what frustrates me the most is when you talk to commercial leaders, and I think, yeah, we covered this before, is in terms of oh yeah, marketing is just like, posting on social. That frustrates me a lot,
Yeah.
because that means that they undervalue what we could be doing
Yeah.
versus like, having a more holistic approach.
Yeah.
um, so I think it's like, yeah, when you also think that, oh yeah, why do I need marketing for my property if my property is already driving money? And I say,
Right.
oh yeah, that makes sense. Now I'm sure you always want to drive more, right?
Yeah.
Now what I can see is like so many properties, especially I would say city hotels,
Yeah.
they think that because they have a lot of ads working with OTAs, that
Mhm.
the base is say 60%, 80% OTAs, they're done. And when I see that, I want to cry. Because the
Yeah.
other day, yeah, honestly, the other day I was working with a colleague, and we was having this chat, and we're talking about this hotel. 90% of the base were OTAs. And I
No.
says, the guy was proud of it. And I says, what make you proud? Can you do the math and see how much money you're wasting to OTAs? And
Yeah.
again, don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't like OTAs. It's just that first you need to emphasize on your own channels. And
Yeah.
yes, you always need OTAs for sure. But
Yeah.
what frustrates me the most is that when commercial leaders see that marketing is only just social or marketing is just PR, versus is like, we help you guys achieve your commercial goals by connecting all the different dots,
Yeah.
because you need to think on the long term game.
Yeah.
And that's where we come from. Because OTAs, yes, is part of the big puzzle, but you cannot put all the eggs in the same basket. So yes, having a stronger online presence, it's hard, but not having it, it's also hard. So I always say, like, pick your heart. So I rather like, spend a good time, say like 6 months or a year to develop your hotel positioning versus just giving that money away to OTAs, because OTAs is just a tactical way of getting more bookings, but in the
Yeah.
long term,
The
that is
guests aren't you. They're not yours.
exactly, they don't you don't owe them. They don't like you. It's just that they come in because they're paying cheaper rates, and you don't want
Yeah.
those guests,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, but it comes back to the educational piece where we're
Mhm.
initially discussing in the conversation, is like understanding what's the value that we can bring to the table by understanding that yes, driving more bookings is just connecting all the dots, not only online but also offline and also on property as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you nailed it. It is this holistic approach. And I think one thing that everyone's always looking for is a quick fix.
Oh yeah.
And there are things that you can implement, today that will start helping. But like you said, this is the long game. This is your holistic strategy for your brand and for your property. And it takes time. But if you put these tools in place, they start working, the return is incredible. And that's really what the goal should be.
100%. Because
Yeah.
also the other thing that is very common as well is like, oh yes, we are not having enough bookings and we're going through low season. Okay, let's cut marketing. And I said, okay, that's not the strategic approach, because
Yeah.
they start feeling like, oh yeah, we're just not meeting our targets. What's wrong? There's compression in the market. What's to do? And it's like, yeah, don't just fall into OTAs because that's a quick fix. Because I would use that time, money, and effort to think, is like, what can we do better that we are not doing, that we should be doing? And that's, for example, especially now with AI, is like so many people are concerned about, oh, I'm not showing on AI. My concern is like, do you have the foundational work even done? Do you have a blog on your website? And so many global brands, I'm
Yeah.
saying global, not only small boutique hotels,
Yeah.
global brands are having the same problem as well. And if you don't start like educating,
Yeah.
like AI algorithm, what your hotel is all about, what kind of content, then why are you caring about voice search or whatever? It's just fix the foundations first, and that has no money impact. I mean, it will impact your revenue in a long term game, but you don't need to be spending every day like what you would do on ads. It's just
Right.
like having a person allocated in your team working on your organic content. Yes, organic content is super important, and so is paid advertising. But you need to see like an omni channel way of developing your strategy from online to offline to on property as well. Because on
Yeah.
property as well, that's what I see a lot of money on the table as well. They just don't have strong in-house communication, and that's when you leave a lot of revenue
Yeah.
untapped, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just like a holistic approach, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like we could chat forever. And you just shared so many great insights. And I think that it is all of the things that we're talking about. I don't want anyone listening to think like, oh, I could never get there, because you can. You can. You don't have to do it all at the same time. All of these things are, they're actually like exciting if you think about it. Like, yes, I do want to understand my ideal customer. I do want to put this strategy in place. I do want to empower my teams. Like, it's all great things that will ultimately lead to an amazing guest experience, a repeat guest, and then that guest, like you said, turning into a brand ambassador and really making your property successful.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
Well, thank you so much for your time with us today. And if there are any director of marketings or director of sales and marketings and GMs, where can they connect with you and learn more about the Hotel Marketing Lady and get all of the amazing insights that you share, that we're so lucky to have connected and reap the benefits of all of your amazing things you share across LinkedIn?
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure spending some time together. And yes, we could talk forever about all this. We should do a
A
second
part
version.
two. Yeah.
Part two, yes, for sure. So if anyone wants to connect with me, they can have a look into my website, which is thehotelmarketinglady.com, or the easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn, which is my name and surname, and I can share the link with you. And you can put it in the notes, because I know my surname is a little bit complicated, but yes, it's Laurean Sahilices, and then you can find it in there. And then feel free to send me a DM and start the conversation. I love networking and supporting the industry and talk
Yeah.
about hotel marketing, travel, and everything related.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And if you want to check out more episodes of the Foundry Talks, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone who listened to us today. And let's keep in touch.